It has long been said that in order to understand the present, one must look back at the past, for every present moment is shaped by what came before. And so, today we remember a dark chapter of African history. This is a dedication to our brothers and sisters of Central Africa and the diaspora, who bore the heaviest chains of the East African slave trade. It is a story of betrayal, of hospitality turned into a curse, of how outsiders and insiders alike fed on the suffering of their own people. This is the story of Tippu Tip and the world that made him. Centuries before Tippu Tip was born, Arabs had come to Africa's shores. In the 6th century, they invaded North Africa, spreading Islam and taking control of vast regions. From there, their influence stretched southward, reaching the Horn of Africa and the eastern coast. At first, these newcomers were welcomed. African tribes, especially the Bantu-speaking peoples, traded with them. Ivory, gold, spices, and goods flowed back and forth across the Indian Ocean. The Persians too joined in, and together with the Africans they built thriving city-states along the coast. This partnership gave birth to the Swahili culture, a blend of African and Arab, of Bantu language enriched with Arabic words, of mosques rising alongside African villages. A culture that survives to this day, spoken by millions. But the seeds of betrayal lay hidden within this hospitality. For among those welcomed as brothers were men who would later turn Africa's children into commodities. Some were the offspring of intermarriage, born of African mothers and Arab or Persian fathers. They looked African, spoke African tongues, lived as Africans, yet their loyalty was split. Tippu Tip was one of these men. The East African coast became one of the most vibrant trading regions of the world. Cities like Kilwa, Mombasa, Lamu, and Zanzibar flourished. Dhows carried goods across the monsoon winds, silks, spices, beads, ivory, and human lives. The Portuguese came in the 15th century, conquering Kilwa and Mombasa. But their dominance faded, and by the 17th century, the Omani Arabs seized control. The turning point came in 1832, when Sultan Sayyid Said of Oman moved his capital to Zanzibar. He transformed the island into the heart of the slave trade. Clove plantations demanded labor, and that labor came in chains. Tens of thousands of Africans were captured, sold, and shipped, their lives feeding the wealth of the Sultan. When Sayyid Said died, his sons continued his legacy. Majid bin Said built Bagamoyo as the main slave port. Barghash bin Said expanded Zanzibar's trade, making it infamous as the slave capital of the world. These sultans empowered traders of mixed descent, men like Tippu Tip, Rumaliza, and others, who pushed deep into the African interior, building fortunes on betrayal. Tippu Tip was born in Zanzibar around 1837. From a young age, he joined caravans inland, learning the trade. These caravans were not small. Hundreds of men marched, carrying beads, cloth, and guns to exchange for ivory and slaves. Armed guards protected the goods, while long lines of captives shuffled in chains. The routes led from Bagamoyo into the Namwizi lands of Tabora, ruled by the warlord Mirambo, and onward to Ujiji on Lake Tanganyika, where Rumaliza ruled. From there, the caravans crossed into the Congo basin. Tippu Tip's genius was not only in war, but in manipulation. He promised chiefs guns and goods, then enslaved them when they resisted. Villages burned, captives chained, ivory seized. His musket fire earned him the name Tippu Tip, echoing tip-tip in the night. By the 1870s, he established his stronghold at Kasongo near the Lualaba River, commanding networks that reached as far as Stanley Falls. But he was not alone. Msiri of Katanga enslaved his people for profit. Rumaliza and Mirambo grew rich on caravans and betrayal. Together, they turned Central Africa into a hunting ground. The tragedy was not just foreign invasion. It was brother against brother, Africans selling Africans, blinded by greed. By the late 19th century, Tippu Tip was more than a trader, he was a king. From Kasongo, he ruled an empire of ivory and slaves. Chiefs paid tribute, caravans bowed to his authority. His wealth rivaled sultans. Even the Sultan of Zanzibar recognized him, appointing him governor of Stanley Falls. But the cruelty did not end with Tippu Tip. His son, Sefu bin Hamid, inherited his power. Sefu was more ruthless than his father. Villages were razed, survivors enslaved, rival chiefs executed. The Congo trembled under his reign of terror. The region became a battlefield of betrayals. Mirambo taxed caravans and enslaved porters. Rumaliza fortified Ujiji as a slave fortress. Msiri turned Katanga into a kingdom of blood. Central Africa became a war zone where lives were currency, where death and chains marched side by side. Into this world came the Europeans. David Livingstone wandered through the horrors, writing of burned villages and slave coffles. His words shocked Europe, but also invited conquest. Henry Morton Stanley arrived next, meeting Tippu Tip in Ujiji. They formed an uneasy alliance. Stanley needed caravans. Tippu Tip saw opportunity. But Stanley's true mission was secret. He worked for King Leopold II of Belgium. Leopold dreamed of his own empire. Through deception, he created the Congo Free State, his personal colony. The irony was cruel, a land of slavery now enslaved again in new forms. Tippu Tip's son, Sefu, clashed with Leopold's forces in the Arab-Belgian War of the 1890s. Battles raged, rivers ran red, but the Arabs lost. Sefu was killed. Tippu Tip withdrew to Zanzibar, living out his days in comfort, dictating his memoirs, while millions perished from the systems he helped build. The fall of Tippu Tip did not end suffering. It only changed its name. Colonialism replaced slavery. Leopold's Congo became a nightmare of rubber quotas, forced labor, and mutilations. Across East Africa, European powers divided the land, replacing Arab slave lords with European governors. The betrayal was complete. Africa had welcomed outsiders, only to be consumed by them. Worse still, some Africans themselves, like Tippu Tip, Msiri Mirambo, betrayed their own blood for guns and beads. The diaspora scattered. Millions carried Africa across the seas to Arabia, Persia, India, and the Americas. They became strangers in foreign lands, yet Africa lived on in their songs, their strength, their resilience. To them we say, you are not forgotten. You are family. Though oceans divide us, history unites us. And to those who remain on the continent, let this history be a warning. The greatest enemy is not always the foreigner. It is self-hate, greed, and betrayal. But hope remains. Swahili culture still thrives, binding millions with language and memory. The diaspora, though torn away, has reshaped the world with African rhythm and spirit. The story of Tippu Tip and the Sultans, of Msiri and Mirambo, of Leopold and Stanley, is not just a story of suffering, it is a call for unity. Never again must Africa betray itself. To our brothers and sisters of Central Africa, who suffered most from these chains. To the millions lost in Zanzibar, Arabia, India, and the Americas. To those whose hands were cut by Leopold's men. To those who perished nameless in forests, deserts, and seas. You are not forgotten. You are Africa. You are family.